The 2018 iPad Pro is a device that honestly still blows my mind every time I use it. I genuinely forget that this is an 8-year-old product. In a tech world where things become obsolete in like every 3 to 5 years. This iPad came out in the year 2018. It's basically running on an 8-year-old chip. And yet here we are in 2026. The iPad is still running modern applications. It's still running the latest iPadOS 26, and it's still fitting perfectly into Apple's current ecosystem. In many ways, it's aging better than the iPhone XS and the Max that came out that same year. And that's the part that really doesn't make sense to me, because if you think about it, those devices, they struggle today. The applications aren't really optimized for those older chips in the Macs and the iPhones. The software has clearly moved on. They no longer get software updates. The Mac, especially those Intel Macs, are getting obsolete. When it comes to looks, especially the iPhone XS, it doesn't look modern or feel modern anymore. But you see this iPad, it's a different story. It did not get left behind. It still looks modern, it still feels modern, and physically, it doesn't even look out of place next to something like the latest and greatest iPad Pro from 2026. And the more I use this iPad, the more I start realizing that this isn't luck. There's something very intentional about how this device was built. When this iPad first came out, it wasn't just another tablet. This was the first iPad to go all in on the modern design. I'm talking about the first iPad to get USB-C, the first iPad to get those slimmer bezels around the sides. This wasn't an upgrade. This was a reset to iPad Pros and just anything iPad in general. Now, me personally, I have had a very interesting relationship with this iPad because I think a lot of people get excited when they first get an iPad. You tell yourself, I'm going to take notes, I'm going to be productive, it's going to replace my laptop or my phone or my TV. All these promises, and then reality hits. It becomes a Netflix machine. And I'm not even going to lie, like that happened to me. I bought mine in 2020 for about $600 used on Facebook Marketplace, which at the time felt like a steal. It served its purpose, especially because I just got out of college and I was preparing for my certifications for my job, so I enjoyed taking notes on that thing. But obviously, I had to take the examination, and once the certification was done, it's like the iPad was really that Netflix machine. So over time, I started asking myself, did I really spend $600 just to watch Netflix on a bigger screen when I already have a TV and a phone? Am I just deep into the Apple ecosystem at this point, and I'm just an Apple sheep, like people like to call it? And that's when I started understanding something important. Most people misunderstand what the iPad Pro actually is, because if you're not making money with this thing, I'm talking about being a graphic designer, a tattoo artist, someone doing 3D modeling, architecture, music production, then yeah, this is overkill. Any iPad Pro from any generation is overkill. But at the same time, this is where the story flips, because for the people who do use it properly, this is not a toy. This is a tool. Let's take the pilots, for example. Pilots literally use iPads as part of their workflow in the cockpit for flight planning, navigation, charts. Applications such as ForeFlight turn an iPad into a critical piece of equipment. It's not a gimmick. That's a real-world usage, and every pilot I've seen in a cockpit has an iPad. Same thing with artists and graphic designers. Before the iPad, if you wanted to do serious digital art, you needed something like a Wacom tablet hooked to a computer. I remember the first few videos I made out of this channel. It was on a used Wacom tablet that I spent $400 on. But now it could have been different, because if you have apps like Procreate, you have the Apple Pencil, it turns the iPad into a digital canvas. It's now possible to interact with your iPad in a way that has never been done before. And I feel like we need to give a shout out to the Apple Pencil, because this is where Apple really nailed it. Unlike something back in the day like the Samsung Galaxy Note or these new Galaxy devices that had the stylus pens, where in my opinion it just felt like a gimmick, or it was good enough to, sign a document on DocuSign. The iPad actually gives you a canvas that you can use properly. The size makes sense, especially for that 12.9 inches personally. The responsiveness is quite remarkable. And the magnetic charging on the side is a game changer, especially when you compare it to the first and second generation of the iPad Pro. It was comical in the way you had to insert the Apple Pencil into the iPad just to give it a charge. So obviously this magnetic charging makes sense. And that adds to my point where this iPad Pro was a reset. All right, so let's talk about how it actually holds up today, because yes, it's 8 years old and you definitely feel it. It's not slow in a frustrating way, but it's not snappy anymore. You definitely see little hangs here and there, and apps take a second longer to open compared to your iPhone. Multitasking isn't as smooth as it used to be, and honestly, that really started happening with the latest iPadOS updates. But at the same time, I as a consumer understand that this is an 8-year-old chip running modern software. And then you have my favorite part of the iPad, which is the ecosystem features. This is where Apple quietly made this thing even more valuable over time. We have features like Sidecar, which is my personal favorite, where I turn this iPad into a second monitor for my Mac. This comes in clutch when traveling and you don't want to go get something too heavy, because I have a lot of friends who work remotely and travel and, need that second monitor. It's nice having an iPad as that for me and not having something so big and clunky coming with me just for the sole purpose of being my second monitor. Some people might worry about latency for Sidecar, like how fast do my cursor move on the iPad. Those issues are gone when you connect a USB-C cable from the Mac to the iPad. My second favorite feature will be the universal control, where one keyboard, one mouse controls both my Mac and my iPad. So this isn't acting as a second screen. The iPad is running on its own iPadOS and my Mac is running on its own macOS. But there are times where I just need to do something on my iPad and I don't need to touch my iPad, because once I move the cursor over from my Mac to the iPad understands the cursor movements and takes control immediately. And just like that, I'm able to use my mouse and my keyboard on the iPad. What's even more crazy is the fact that I can drag and drop media from my Mac to the iPad using that cursor switch over. It feels like magic when it works, and that's one of the things I do appreciate about Apple and how they pay attention to detail. Another clutch feature will be the universal clipboard, but that's not really a feature that's iPad exclusive, because the iPhone also has it, where you can just, copy something from your Mac and be able to paste it on your iPhone or your iPad. It's nice and it works, and I feel like it just elevates the iPad even more. I'm not even gonna lie, there are times where I prefer the iPad apps over the Mac apps and the iPhone apps. Everything feels more interactive on the larger canvas of the iPad. It just hits differently, especially when doing singular activities. Say, for example, checking my email, doom scrolling on the internet, or even for serious stuff. So say I'm trying to purchase a house and I want to go on Zillow or Redfin. I'll take the iPad app over going to the web browser on my Mac or the app on my iPhone. That bigger canvas definitely makes things a whole lot smoother, and just having that finger touch control makes things even better. This is also where the limitations start showing, because the moment you try to push this like a laptop, you feel it. Multitasking gets messy. The workflow isn't as fluid. I know they have Stage Manager and all these things for iPadOS, but this whole idea of turning the iPad into a laptop with keyboards and accessories, I've never really agreed with it, because at that point, just get a laptop. In my opinion, the beauty of an iPad is that it's not a Mac. It's touch first. It's simple. And once you try to force it into something else, it loses what makes it feel special. And this brings me to what the iPad actually is. It's a secondary device. My phone handles quick things, social media and all that good stuff. My laptop handles real work. And the iPad, it just makes life easier. It's the device I grab when I need to have a second screen when traveling. It's the device I use on flights. It's the device I casually interact with throughout the day. It's not essential, but when you have it, you feel it. It's something I like to keep by the side in my peripheral vision. And I think that's the biggest realization that I had with this iPad, because at first I thought it was underutilized. Then I thought it was overhyped. But now I understand it. This iPad is a feat of engineering. Not because it's the fastest, not because it's the newest, but because 8 years later, it is still relevant till this day. And the craziest part is that the limitation of this iPad isn't really the hardware. If anything, it knocked it out the park. It's the software, because the moment Apple decides to stop supporting it, which might be this year, that unfortunately will be the beginning of the end. Not because it can't keep going, but because it's not allowed to. And that's what makes this iPad feel like a bit of a goodbye. Not today, but it definitely feels like that clock is ticking slowly. And honestly, it's been an amazing run. So, if you have one of these, appreciate it. And if you're thinking about buying one, understand what it's for. Understand the software life cycle, and I really want you to probably future-proof yourself. But when talking about future-proofing, just don't buy an iPad because it's the Pro. Buy it because you actually need it for what it offers. We have the iPad, the iPad Air, and the iPad Pro for reasons. I know YouTubers like to say I'm not a financial advisor and all that good stuff, but spending thousands on the latest iPhone, MacBook, and the iPad just because it's the latest and the greatest and the most expensive in this economy, I'm sorry to tell you, but that's crazy. You see, this iPad, it was different. In my opinion, it's one of Apple's best products. And 8 years later, it's been the benchmark for iPads ever since. RIP, iPad Pro 2018, third generation. I'm gonna have to use you till the wheels fall off, because I'm not giving up on you. All right, that's it from me. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.